I used to believe that no matter how hard life got, as long as I had my husband by my side, everything would be okay. I couldn't have been more wrong. My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 70 years old, and until last year, I thought I knew exactly how the rest of my life would look. My husband, Daniel, and I had spent 46 wonderful years together in a quiet little town outside Columbus, Ohio. We weren't rich, but we had a comfortable life. Daniel worked as an HVAC technician for nearly 40 years, and I spent most of my career as a librarian at the local public library. We raised one son together, Ethan, who served in the Air Force and lived in Arizona with his family. Daniel also had a son from his first marriage, Michael. We never had the closest relationship, but I always treated him like family. Our little brick house wasn't anything fancy, but it was home. Every scratch on the hardwood floor had a story. Every picture hanging on the wall reminded us of another chapter of our lives. Every Sunday morning, Daniel made pancakes while I brewed the coffee. We'd sit on our back porch, watching birds gather around the feeder he'd built with his own hands. Those mornings felt like they would last forever. Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. Daniel had gone outside to mow the lawn before the weather got too hot. I was inside folding laundry when I heard the lawnmower stop. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then I noticed how quiet everything had become. I looked out the kitchen window and saw Daniel lying motionless beside the mower. The basket of clean towels slipped from my hands. I ran outside screaming his name. Daniel? Daniel, can you hear me? He never answered. The ambulance arrived within minutes. But deep down, I already knew. At the hospital, a doctor gently placed his hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Wilson. We did everything we could. Just like that, the man I'd loved for almost half a century was gone. The funeral was held 4 days later. Friends, neighbors, former co-workers, everyone came to say goodbye. People hugged me, told me how strong I was, and promised they'd always be there if I needed anything. By the following week, the phone stopped ringing. The visitors stopped coming. The casserole disappeared. And for the first time in 46 years, I came home to an empty house. Silence can be louder than any noise. I still found myself setting 2 coffee mugs on the counter every morning before remembering there was only me. Some nights, I fell asleep in Daniel's old recliner because it still smelled like him. Grief has a strange way of making time stand still. 3 weeks after the funeral, Michael called. Hey Margaret, he said. I figured you could probably use some help with Dad's paperwork. I felt relieved. Daniel had always handled our finances. Insurance forms. Bank accounts. Property taxes. It all looked like a foreign language to me. When Michael arrived the next afternoon, he carried a thick folder stuffed with documents. I've already talked to the insurance company, he said. I just need a few signatures so we can get everything settled. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was Daniel's son. For the next hour, he pointed to different pages while I signed where he told me. I barely read a single line. My eyes still filled with tears every time I saw Daniel's name printed on the paperwork. When we finished, Michael smiled. Don't worry, he said. I'll take care of everything. I thanked him. Looking back now, that's the moment my life truly began to fall apart. About a month later, there was another knock at my front door. When I opened it, 2 deputies from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office were standing on my porch. One of them removed his hat before speaking. Mrs. Wilson. Yes, I'm afraid we have some difficult news. I felt my stomach tighten. What happened? He glanced down at the papers in his hand. This property has legally changed ownership. I frowned. I don't understand. The home now belongs to Michael Carter. For a second, I honestly thought they had the wrong address. There must be some mistake. I said, I've lived here for 46 years. The deputy looked genuinely sympathetic. According to county records, You signed the transfer documents yourself. My heart nearly stopped. Transfer documents. I suddenly remembered all those papers Michael had placed in front of me. No, I whispered. No. I would never sign my house away. Before either deputy could answer, a black pickup truck pulled into my driveway. Michael stepped out. He didn't even look ashamed. I'm sorry it had to happen like this, he said. I stared at him in disbelief. You tricked me. I didn't trick you, he replied calmly. You signed the papers. I trusted you. He shrugged. The house belongs to me now. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I looked at the deputies, hoping one of them would tell me this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Instead, one of them quietly said, "Ma'am, you have until tomorrow evening to leave the property." Tomorrow. 40-6 years of memories, packed into one day. That night, I walked through every room of the house. I touched the kitchen counter, where Daniel used to sit drinking coffee. I ran my fingers across the height marks we'd carved into the hallway wall when Ethan was growing up. I stood in our bedroom, holding Daniel's old flannel shirt against my chest. How could someone steal a lifetime with a few signatures? The next afternoon, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. Most of our furniture had to stay. Our wedding photos stayed hanging on the wall because I couldn't fit it into my car. Closing the front door for what I believed was the last time, it felt like I was burying my husband all over again. I climbed into my 15-year-old Ford Focus and drove away with nowhere to go. By sunset, I was officially homeless. That first night, I parked my old Ford Focus in the corner of a Walmart parking lot. I had heard people say it was one of the safest places to sleep in your car. I never imagined I'd be one of those people. I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go and covered myself with an old blanket I'd found in the trunk. The summer nights in Ohio were warm, but somehow I couldn't stop shivering. I wasn't cold. I was terrified. At 70 years old, I had become homeless. The next morning, I washed my face in a gas station restroom and tried to convince myself this was only temporary. It wasn't. For the next 2 weeks, I lived out of my car. I stretched every dollar I had. Breakfast was usually a cup of coffee and a banana. Dinner came from the dollar menu whenever I could afford it. Some nights I cried until I fell asleep. Other nights, I simply stared at the ceiling of my car, wondering how my life had unraveled so quickly. One afternoon, while charging my phone at the public library, I noticed a flyer on the bulletin board. Volunteers needed community reading program. I smiled without thinking. Books had always been my safe place. The following morning, I walked into the community center and asked if they still needed help. The director, Linda Brooks, smiled warmly. We're always looking for volunteers. I didn't tell her I was homeless. I simply told her I had been a librarian for over 30 years. Within days, I was reading stories to children every afternoon. For 2 hours each day, I forgot about my own problems. One Friday, after story time ended, an older gentleman waited until everyone had left. My granddaughter hasn't stopped talking about you, he said. My name's Frank Miller. He introduced himself with a warm smile and thanked me for making his granddaughter excited about reading again. As we talked, he noticed the 2 suitcases sitting beside my chair. Are you traveling? He asked. I hesitated. Then I quietly answered, no, I'm living in my car. His smile disappeared. You mean, right now? I nodded. Frank didn't ask embarrassing questions. He simply handed me his business card. I own a small apartment building a few miles from here, he said. I have an empty studio. Stay there for a while. I immediately shook my head. I can't afford rent. I'm not asking you to. I stared at him. Everyone needs a second chance. Margaret, for the first time in weeks, I cried because Someone had shown me kindness. The apartment wasn't fancy, the carpet was old, the kitchen was tiny, but it had a bed, a hot shower, and a front door that locked. After weeks of sleeping in my car, it felt like a mansion. A month later, Linda surprised me. Our library assistant retired. She said, "I'd like to offer you the position." The pay wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time since Daniel died, I had a steady paycheck. Slowly, my life began coming back together. Then one afternoon, everything changed again. A certified letter arrived from a law office. At first I thought it was another bill. Instead, it contained something I never expected. A local attorney named Rebecca Hayes had been reviewing probate records for an unrelated case. While doing so, she noticed serious irregularities in the paperwork. Transferring my home to Michael, some signatures had been notarized incorrectly. Several required disclosures were missing. One document had even been filed after the legal deadline. Rebecca believed the transfer was fraudulent. She offered to represent me free of charge. "I think we can get your house back," she said. I almost dropped the phone. Months later, we stood inside the Franklin County courthouse. Michael looked confident. He claimed I had willingly signed everything. But Rebecca had uncovered the truth. Security camera footage from the title office proved I had never been present when some of the documents were finalized. The notary admitted Michael had asked her to stamp paperwork she hadn't actually witnessed. The judge didn't take long to reach a decision. The transfer of ownership is hereby declared invalid. My knees nearly gave out. The judge continued. Mrs. Wilson is the lawful owner of the property. I closed my eyes. For the first time in nearly a year, I could finally breathe again. A week later, I unlocked my front door. The house was dusty. The furniture had been moved around, but it was still my home. I walked into the kitchen and found Daniel's old coffee mug sitting exactly where he'd left it. I picked it up and smiled. Through my tears, I made it home. I whispered, but something inside me had changed. I knew what it felt like to lose everything. I knew what it felt like to be invisible. So instead of pretending it had never happened, I decided to help people who were living the life I'd barely escaped. With Frank's help, I started a small nonprofit that provided emergency housing and legal assistance to seniors who had been victims of financial abuse. We called it Second Chance Home. Within 2 years, we'd helped more than 60 elderly men and women find safe housing and trusted legal support. As for Michael, he was charged with fraud and ordered to repay every penny he had taken from me. The money didn't matter anymore. Justice did. People sometimes ask me if I hate him. The answer is no, because hatred would have kept me trapped in the worst chapter of my life. Instead, I chose to write a better ending. Losing my husband broke my heart. Losing my home nearly broke my spirit. But losing everything taught me something I never expected. Sometimes, the darkest chapter of your life is only the beginning of your greatest comeback.